Hey guys, it's Edlin from LUCIDPIXUL and welcome back. Over 15 years, I've had the honor and the pleasure of being an art teacher in public schools, in private schools, you name it. And this coming 2025, I'm going to be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of my private online art mentorship, LUCIDPIXUL, where I've had a chance to teach artists all the way from bare bones beginners, drawing for the first time in their entire life, all the way up to seasoned art gods who've been doing this for decades and decades. And although skills range and vary quite vastly, there's one thing that ties us all together, and that is how we manage or struggle to manage to navigate the emotional aspects of a professional art career. Being a professional artist requires a lot more than just drawing really, really well. It requires us as well to be able to master the challenges, when life gets in the way, be it social, personal, in relationships, physical, medical, chemical. There are many obstacles that we have to face as artists, as people growing up, in order for us to thrive. Otherwise, those things can overwhelm us and we can ultimately let go of our dreams. For reasons that I might not be able to explain fully, at least on a personal level, I decided at some point in my life to make it my life's duty to prevent that dream from dying, to be there to be able to help artists reach their dreams. And today is probably going to be one of the most important contributions I can make to keeping that dream alive. In order to do so, I need to go back and rekindle a few topics I've spoken about in the past, personal things that I've been through, that I've navigated through, and share with you why they weren't only some of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with, they're also the things that I wouldn't trade for the world. They're things that ultimately ended up being the proudest achievements in my life. And the fact that they were hard was one of the most important ingredients to that sense of achievement. And let's start with my herniated back. Over the last 20 plus years, ever since I got into jive dancing and swing dancing, in fact, when I got into dancing in general, and then when I was younger, I was also doing Taibo and stuff like that, which is probably the worst thing in the world for your back, I started getting back injuries, disc herniations. And even though I didn't exactly know what the problem was, I knew what a lot of the symptoms were. I wasn't actually entirely clear on what a disc herniation was. All I knew was at least once or twice a year, I would be shoveling the snow or raking the lawn or doing some kind of an activity or moving in some kind of an awkward way. And all of a sudden I'd get this characteristic spasm in my back. Nothing too harsh, but I learned to know what that spasm meant. That spasm meant tomorrow I'm not going to be able to get out of bed. And probably for the next few days or weeks or maybe even months, life's going to be really, really difficult and extremely painful. And sure as shit, it was. I'd wake up the next day and I wouldn't be able to move. I wouldn't be able to get up. My back was completely locked up. And well, I just had to take it easy. Don't push myself and wait for the storm to pass. And this happened over and over and over again for years, for decades, until eventually, several years ago, it happened again. I was cutting the lawn in my backyard, and nothing too strenuous, no big deal, just, mowing the lawn. And I put the handle of the lawnmower down to fold it up, and I get a spasm in my back. And I immediately went, fuck, here we go again. And sure shit, I wake up the next day, I can't walk. Sneezing sends shooting pains through my back and down my legs that make me feel like I'm going to pass out. And, the characteristic old shit. And even though I kind of had an idea that it was probably a disc herniation, whatever, it is what it is. Take it easy, do some stretches, whatever, and eventually it'll pass. But it didn't pass. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed. Before you know it, we're now approaching half a year. I've never had to deal with this kind of pain for this long in my life. And again, I'm not talking about just, it hurts when I'm sitting in a certain position. No, this is a 10 on 10 pain 24 hours a day. Lying down, sitting up, standing, walking. It's terrible. You can barely walk. You can barely move. Moving your foot an inch is horribly painful. And it wouldn't go away. And it wouldn't go away. So I had no choice. I was forced to start to try to figure out what the hell was going on, because you can't live with this pain indefinitely. You can't. I couldn't imagine living the rest of my life like this. So I started looking up videos online, and I started to study what the problem was and what is a disc herniation, and what are the nerves that are affected by a disc herniation, and what leads to a disc herniation, and how to prevent it, and what kind of exercises to do. And I basically started to try anything possible. I educated myself as best as I could with what limited effort I was making at the time. And then I decided, okay, screw it. I'll go see some physiotherapists. And there were physiotherapists nearby in my neighborhood. And it wasn't getting better. It was just getting worse. Every single time I'd go into a physiotherapist's office, they would tell me to do the same stupid stretches and do the same stupid exercises and the nerve flossing shit and all of this. And it wasn't working. And furthermore, it wasn't only not working, but it felt counterintuitive to me. Something about what they were asking me to do didn't make sense for my body. They weren't fixing the problem. And when you are suffering in any way, it could be medically, it could be emotionally, it could be physically, when you're suffering and you reach out to a professional to tackle this very, very complicated issue, something that feels out of your control, out of your reach, out of your expertise, and they don't only not help, but they make it worse. That's when hopelessness starts to kick in. And you start to think to yourself, what am I going to do next? So you start to think of desperate measures, such as surgery, having to get spinal fusions or something like that. That's a really, really big deal. This is something that impacts your life. Now, of course, people get spinal fusions all the time and they live perfectly good lives. Keanu Reeves got a spinal fusion before he shot The Matrix, so it's not the end of the world. But it's spine surgery. It's a big deal, right? But I'm in so much pain that I'm willing to fancy that thought. And I really started to consider it. But I'd go to doctors. Doctors would wave it off and not make too much of a big deal and just say, wait it out. And I'm like sitting there going, at this point, it wasn't just 6 months. Now we're over a year. And then it ended up being a year and a half. And I'm still in pain. I was in pain for so long, it started to feel like this is just the new norm. This is just my new reality. I have to learn to deal with it. But pain wouldn't let me go. And there was a reason why the pain wouldn't let me go this time around. It's because I wasn't learning my lesson. The pain was there to teach me something. The pain was not there to make me feel sorry for myself. The pain wasn't there to make me feel like life was unfair. The pain wasn't there to force me to consult with people that couldn't help me. The pain was there to teach me. And I eventually, one day, put the feeling sorry for myself aside. And I said, the pain's going to be there whether I like it or not until I learn to do something about it. Until I listen. Listen intently. Don't listen in a way where I'm looking for a quick fix. I'm looking for that painkiller. I'm looking for that injection. I'm looking for that surgery that's going to give me the quick fix. No. This is a lesson that's going to require my time and patience and effort. And I discovered a couple of YouTubers like Dr. Charlie Johnson and Christy Ennis and El Paso Manual Physical Therapy, all physiotherapists and doctors and trainers that I learned to deeply respect based off of their advanced knowledge of the way the human body works, not these idiot trainers that tell you to stretch. These underqualified, undertrained, overhyped physiotherapists. And I started being able to distinguish between the ones who were just trying to create content and the ones that were there to help. And I started to change my habits. I started to realize that the reason why I've been dealing with these disc herniations for over 20 years is because I never fixed the root problem. And I knew I had to fix the root problem. And I figured it out. It was, I wasn't engaging my core the right way. But how do you engage your core? What muscles are involved in engaging your core? Your lower abs. How do you engage your lower abs? What other muscles? It's glutes. You're sitting all the day. You're stretching your glutes all day. They get weak. They can't support and keep your pelvis in a healthy position, which causes too much stress on your lumbar spine, which leads to a herniation. It was only then, after almost 2 years of pain, that I learned the valuable lesson. Real change requires patience and effort and focus and education and consistency, especially issues of the human body, issues of your health. These aren't overnight fixes. These aren't medications. These are, you have to relearn how to move. You have to train your body. You have to change the physiology of your body and perform your day-to-day tasks in a different way. And I did. And I started training my lower abs. I started training my glutes. I started doing exercise to stabilize my SI joint. All of things that I completely took for granted. I started to educate myself on all of the nerves of the lower back and the sciatic nerve and how that passes down through the rest of the body. And then I started to realize this isn't only something that stems at the lumbar spine. This is something that starts all the way down to the feet. And I realized how the kind of footwear I was using was leading to certain types of adaptations over decades that was just aggravating the problem. And I realized I need to change my footwear. And I did. And I started wearing different types of shoes, technically barefoot shoes. And over time, my toes started to realign, which gave me better stability in my feet, which gave me better stability in my knees. And I could physically see the shape of my toes change over time. I'm a man in 48 who's changing the shape of his body. All of a sudden, I started to realize I need to do more exercise. And I started exercising every single day, alternating between doing weights, doing the proper kind of training to stabilize all of these muscles I've taken for granted, not just the big blingy muscles that show off your big physique, but the deeper muscles that stabilize your structure. I was doing cardio every second day. And since that day that I made that decision, I haven't missed a single day of exercise. I've worked out 7 days a week ever since. Now, of course, I don't burn myself out, but I made day to day efforts to stabilize, strength, stretch, and keep up a daily fitness, a daily mobility. I changed the ergonomics of my entire studio. I started to learn what proper ergonomics were. Not the ergonomic, expensive furniture you buy, but proper ergonomics and keep your body moving so that your muscles and your bones and your tendons don't get adapted to bad postures. And that led to me healing. After 2 years of debilitating pain, it took me 1 month to go from 10 on 10 pain to a 0.5 on 10. A little bit of an irritation in my lower back, and then eventually that disappeared. And it didn't come back. And I knew in order for me to keep a healthy back, in order for me to keep a healthy system, I needed to keep this up. This wasn't just a fix. This was a lifestyle change. But pain was my teacher. Pain was there not as an obstacle, not as a reason to feel sorry for myself. Pain was there to teach me things and to force me to learn things that I wouldn't do willingly otherwise. I had to be forced to learn. I had to be forced to change and improve. And I continue to do those exercises to this day, consistently. I never miss a beat because I have that little reminder of pain in the back of my head that says, you got to keep going. This is for the rest of your life. And so I do. Now, let's fast forward to something that happened very recently. My studio flooded. I shared that with everybody. I got about 1 to 2 inches of water throughout my entire basement, and it basically destroyed all the floors in my studio. And my family was out of town, and the water is up past my knees right outside my door. And I'm looking, and the entire floor of my studio is completely flooded in water. And at the beginning, I went into panic mode for the first 15 minutes. I was like, oh my God, everything's going to get destroyed. Thankfully, none of my electronics did. Some of my furniture did, but my electronics was fine. But I'm sitting there with the reality that in a heartbeat, just like that spasm in my back, in a heartbeat, everything changes. All of a sudden, life goes from keep on keeping on to all of a sudden, it can't. Something has gotten in the way. And once the flood outside subsided and the water started to drain back into the sewers outside and it wasn't flooding anymore into my studio, I got towels and buckets, and I started to wring out all those wring towels of water into the buckets and fill them up one at a time, and hoist them upstairs and dump them out on the street and come back in. And I kept this up for around at least 6 hours, and I did it alone. My family was out of town. Bucket after bucket after bucket of water I brought upstairs and I tossed outside. And I carefully carried up all of these different things. And in order to access a lot of this water, I had to move a lot of heavy furniture out of the way. And the big one that was really, really concerning me was the big, thick, high pile carpet I had right in the middle of my floor, which is like a 10 by 10 carpet. And it was soaked like a sponge. And if you know anything about wet carpets, especially a carpet that's thick and as large as that, it's basically weighs around 2 times my weight. I'm a little close to 200 pounds. This felt like it was well over 300 to 400 pounds. It was massively heavy. Just to roll it up was almost impossible. But I had to get it out of the house, and there was nobody that could help me with it. And I bet if you've been listening to me so far, you know exactly what was going on in my head. Not only am I in a house where it's completely flooded, but I have to get this heavy carpet out of the house, and I'm terrified that I'm going to put my back out doing it. And I've already just spent the last 6 hours soaking up water with towels and carrying heavy buckets and moving furniture around my house. My back's going to get tired and it's going to go. But I just reminded myself this whole time, keep your glutes engaged, keep your lower back engaged. Don't bend with your lower back. Make sure to keep all those, you've got to hold that structure in place. Remember your training, young Jedi. And so I did. And that night I left the carpet there. But the following morning, I had to get that wet carpet out because then it's just going to make the problem worse. I can't get the floorboards out. It's just going to end up getting moldy and cause a really bad problem because it's just this hugely damp thing that's sitting right in the middle of my studio floor. And I managed to roll it up, and then I managed to hoist it up into the vertical, and then I bear hugged it basically, and one stair at a time, I hoisted this thing on my own up 15 stairs and got it outside and dumped it out in the front where the garbage pickup was going to come and pick it up eventually. And I didn't hurt myself. That experience, and the next morning, having no pain, no discomfort, nothing. When only a few years before, putting a little plastic lawnmower handle put my back out. I just hoisted a 300 plus pound carpet up a flight of stairs and dumped it out completely on my own. And my back is perfectly fine. And I realized something at that moment. I realized that all those back herniations that I'd suffered over the years was the greatest gift Mother Nature ever gave me. It taught me that in order to grow, in order to evolve, you have to change your relationship with pain. Pain is not there to make you suffer and make you feel like a victim. Pain is there as a teacher to force you to gain an insight into who you are when life's not fair. And it's going to teach you who you are and what you're made of every single time. And every single time you think that you've overcome the obstacles and you think you've got your life figured out because you've got your 6-figure salary and you've got your nice home and your expensive car outside and your partner and your 3.5 kids, you got all that shit? You got your life set up? Nope. Mother Nature is just going to go, now it's gone. What are you going to do now? Oh, you can't walk anymore. What are you going to do now? Oh, your basement's flooded. What are you going to do now? If you take that pain for granted, you'll sit around and feel sorry for yourself. And eventually things will pass. But if you keep letting things pass over and over and over again, eventually it's going to not go away. The pain's going to last. It's going to endure. It's going to sit there stubbornly right in the middle of your living room, and it's going to look at you with callous eyes, and it's going to say, unless you fucking get up off your lazy ass and do something about it, the pain's not going to go away. I'm not going to let you off the hook this time. Now you have to do the work. And at the beginning, you're going to be exhausted. It's going to feel overwhelming. You're going to feel like, Jesus, I can't even imagine how much effort this is going to take. And Mother Nature just keeps staring at you with these cold eyes, and she's just going to keep staring there and go, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. And then eventually you're going to go, okay, asshole, you win. I'm listening. She's going to go, good. Now, let's get to work. If it wasn't for that pain, I never would have survived that flooded situation on my own. My back would have gone out, and not only would I have would I have had this huge ordeal to deal with. And cats, I had to move into a safe place because I couldn't be home and then now I'm home alone, and now I can't walk. So now I have to call an ambulance because I can't get out of the house and I don't know what the fuck to do. I would have been in seriously dire straits, but I managed it on my own because Mother Nature won and taught me how to redefine my relationship with pain. It's a teaching tool. And then comes the flood itself. After I'd cleaned up all of this water, I'm sitting there exhausted. It's around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Everything smells damp. And I sit down on a chair and I look around and I think to myself, what the hell am I going to do with all this stuff? Where am I going to move this? I'm thinking about having to tear up these floors and pull some walls off, and all of this crap, all of these wires, all of this equipment, I have to take it all apart. And the very thought of it was exhausting me. And then I stopped and I thought to myself, yeah, all this stuff. I realized in that moment, much like Tyler Durden said in Fight Club, what you own ends up owning you. And I realized all of these things that I had weren't only very easy to lose, but all of these things that I had, all of this equipment that I had set up, all of these things that I had stored away, all of these wires and cables and setup stuff that I had lying around was a burden. It was friction in my life. It was clutter that was eating up on my valuable space. And as I sat there in this state of disarray with everything pretty much shoved all over the place, feeling terrible, I start to get excited about all of these things that I can start to sell off and get rid of. All of the space I can start to free up. All of this equipment that I don't need to worry about. What are the things I truly need to get my job done? And what are the things that are just adding clutter and weight to my life? And in a state of total exhaustion, staring at this horrible mess, I started to fantasize about redecorating the space in a more minimalistic, cleaner, more functional, less stressful way. And I started to get very optimistic about what was to come. What the flood actually did was force me to move everything out of that space, because the idea of doing that voluntarily was overwhelming. But now I had no choice. I had to change. I had to clean things up. I had to move things out. I had to throw things out. I had to tear things up. And that thought excited me. It excited me that I finally had an excuse to push myself through this difficulty and come out the other end a much freer person from all this clutter, from all this stress, from all this overwhelm. I took a deep breath and I reminded myself, Mother Nature's teaching the lesson. She's teaching you that no matter what you have, nature can take it all away. Life can take it away. A tornado can come by and tear the roof off of your house. What are you going to do? A forest fire can come by and burn everything you know. It could be gone. What are you going to do? Are you going to cry about it? Yeah, initially. But if you're smart, then you'll realize that every single adversity, every single challenge, every single pain, every single hardship you ever have to deal with, I had to realize that it was up to me to create a reality around the way I work. My channel, my YouTube channel, is exactly the same thing. My YouTube channel is a manifestation of my uniqueness, of what makes me different. It's not weak and less because I can't do things the same way other people can. No, I thrive because I do things the way I do better than anybody else, because I'm me. And nobody's a better master at me than myself. And this philosophy has trickled into everything in my life, from my values to my virtues, to my professional standards, to how I build my space and how I organize myself to produce things professionally. I had to eventually learn that that pain was trying to teach me a lesson. And it wasn't until I listened that true change happened and great things happened. My thyroid. I educated myself on how the endocrine system worked. All of these wonderful things that I've learned over the years have all been a product of challenge, of adversity. One of the reasons why I started a private mentorship was because in the public school system, when you have 50 students to correct and address and answer questions to, you can't get to know any of them personally. And I'm not saying that the public school system is completely broken, but it's a system that I feel, well, it has a lot of potential. It just needs to work harder and figure some shit out, because it is hurting as far as I'm concerned. But as a private mentor, in my mentorship, I get the chance to be able to meet people one-on-one and create meaningful relationships with them and listen to their stories and get to know their personalities and how their brain works. And we become friends. We get to know each other on a personal level. We have that time to be able to spend together. And I guarantee you, when you get down to the fundamentals of every single artist, it's not skill that's our biggest obstacle. It's not age and experience. It's not salary. It's how we manage life's struggles, because every single one of us have struggles, but all of us have a different relationship with the word struggle. And if you're somebody who can learn how to recalibrate your perspective of difficulty, pain, challenge, obstacles, adversity, then your life will change, because everything that might have felt unfair and painful at one point will become your greatest allies of growth. And that's what I wish for you. Ultimately, it's up to you to learn who you are, how you tick, what's unique about you, why you feel certain ways, and why you have to deal with certain challenges, and have the tools and the patience and the wisdom and the perseverance to overcome it. So just like me, one day you're going to find yourself hoisting a 300-pound carpet up a flight of stairs and not get injured in the process. All right. With that said, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.